Hello there, good evening, and welcome to Spectrum Debate number 8, whether you're watching on YouTube, Google Plus, or elsewhere. Tonight, each of our guests has picked a topic for us to debate, and we'll introduce the topics, and then we're going to debate them. In a few moments, I'll introduce each of them to you, but don't forget, as ever, we want to hear your views, your questions, and your challenges to each of our guests. You can do so using the hashtag SpectrumDebate, singular, and I'll do my best to put your questions to our guests and let all of our other viewers know what you are thinking. If you are watching on Google Plus, you can also use the Applause app, which tells us how much you agree or disagree with what's being said at any particular time. So without further ado, let me introduce our guests to you, and we'll find out what their topics are. Our first guest tonight is Lily Jane Summers, who is a returning regular. She's a supporter of the Labour Party, a blogger, agnostic, a liberal socialist, a Germanophile, and a Republican, boo hiss. She's in favour of various things, including safe and legal sex work, which we will be talking about tonight, and she's calling us tonight from the West Midlands. Hello, Lily.
Hi.
And I think I've already trodden on your toes because that's going to be your topic, isn't it?
It is indeed, Gareth.
I do apologise. Thank you very much. Our next guest tonight is a new guest. It's Councillor Roger Patterson, who is, and if I get him on screen for you, there you are, a Conservative councillor representing the Scampton ward. That's West Lindsey District Council in Lincolnshire. In amongst other things, Roger serves on planning, so he knows all about many of the issues to do with our green belt and urban and rural development, and he's the council's democracy champion. Other times he's also a coach driver working from Lincoln. Good evening, Roger.
Evening, Gareth.
And what's your topic for us tonight?
The topic is democracy and local candidates.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed. Our next guest tonight has temporarily vanished. I'll come to him in a moment. Martin Keegan. He's returning to us. He appeared a few weeks ago, described himself as an active citizen, a computer programmer, and a plainclothes comedian. I know from my chats with him he's very well travelled, and he's interested in politics in many different scales, right from local to global. And you're going to be talking on all of our topics tonight, aren't you, Martin?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Nice to see you again. And you will all hopefully in a moment meet our final guest tonight, Stephen Donnan. And to tell you, Stephen, he's a counselling student at Belfast Metropolitan University. He's a writer, a guest on the radio station Blast 106. He's a human rights activist, and he's very active in the Alliance political party in Northern Ireland, where he was also leading light in their LGBT group, and I hope he'll be joining us again shortly. And in fact, yes, here he is, and we'll be able to welcome him properly in a second. Hello, Stephen.
Sorry. Hello.
Don't worry. Welcome back. What will be your topic this evening?
Tonight I'll be talking about the proposed Conscience Clause bill going through the Northern Ireland Assembly that would exclude LGBT people from accessing goods and services.
Thank you very much indeed. So those are our guests. I'm your host, I'm Gareth. For full disclosure, I am a Conservative, but I'll do my best to play devil's advocate and to challenge all of our guests tonight. Of course, I'll do that with your help, with the questions and challenges that you send in. Please don't forget our standard disclaimer that whilst our guests may well support a party, none of them speaks officially for or on behalf of their party here tonight. So please take everything they say as their own personal opinions. And if you would like to appear on this show, perhaps next week in our final show of the year, or after Christmas and New Year when we're back, let us know as soon as possible. We will bite your hand off. We'll be very grateful for anyone to come on and from across the political spectrum. So, without further ado, we will go to our first topic, and utilising our high-tech laser selection method, the first person chosen was Lily.
Yes.
Okay. Off you go.
So my topic is about sex work and pornography in the United Kingdom. So what we've seen at the moment in Northern Ireland is that the buying for sex, i.e. the Nordic model, is going to be introduced in Northern Ireland. So the first part of my argument is if, for a start, it's completely wrong to ban sex work in any form. It's either going down the road of the Nordic model, where you only criminalise the buying of sex, or you criminalise the sex worker also. So the first part of my argument in particular is criminalising sex work is completely illiberal and the wrong thing to do. The best way to protect sex workers is to make it legal, and to make sure that you have significant amount of protections for sex workers. And what that ensures is, if sex work is legal, it gives sex workers the confidence where they do suffer rape and sexual violence and abuse, that they have the confidence to go to the police and to seek help, and also have the conditions for sex workers to go out of the industry if they want to. The first part of my argument is about sex work and how we should make sure it's safe and legal, and has the conditions for sex workers to stop being sex workers, essentially, if they really do want to, rather than coercing them, as we've seen in Northern Ireland for vacuous reasons, for instance, religious reasons. And the second argument I'll be making tonight is in regard to pornography laws. What was introduced on the 1st of December is significant new pornography laws in regards to videos. So if anyone publishes a video online, video on demand, that includes, I quote, spanking, caning, aggressive whipping, penetration by any object associated with violence, physical or verbal abuse, even if the people involved consent, water sports, physical restraint, humiliation, female ejaculation, strangulation, face-sitting, and fisting. So the first point of my argument is this is completely sexist. To ban female ejaculation but male ejaculation just doesn't make any sense at all. And for the government to be involved in pornography, even when it involves consenting adults, seems completely authoritarian. And essentially my argument is all about that the government shouldn't get involved in people's bedroom, as long as the people involved such acts consent, they're overaged. Essentially my argument comes down that we shouldn't make these acts illegal, and the government shouldn't be involved in people's bedroom in such pornography or sex work.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me give you a couple of the comments we've had so far before I open it up to the rest of you. We've had Cameron S. Happy birthday, by the way, Cameron. I'm open to persuasion on this topic. It would be an interesting debate, though I wouldn't want it to be promoted. I'm assuming he means sex work rather than the show. It should be promoted as widely as possible. A confused ninja, at a confused ninja. Hello, Ian. We should not criminalise sex workers. We should make environments for them to be safe and protect them from coercion. The gunslinger, at the oncoming. Yes, I agree with Lily Summers. Sex work done on a voluntary basis should be legal with appropriate safeguards. Who'd like to come in on this?
Yeah, I will. I'll start.
Fire away.
Hi. First of all, should sex work be legal? Absolutely. I think you should have safe areas, brothels, where you've got protection for the workers, protection for the clients, where the sex workers can be checked out and kept clean and helped if they're on drugs or anything. I think we need to get them off the streets where they're not safe, where they're exposed to violence and drugs. And the second part about the porn laws, quite agree with Lily. The government should have no say in these porn laws, as long as you don't promote rape or bestiality or anything else. What goes, as far as I'm concerned, and they should have stayed out of it. And I just think it's an absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Stephen, I don't know if you want to add anything at this point, because Northern Ireland's been mentioned in particular already, and I know you'll be covering other elements of that shortly. What's your view?
Well, I agree with Lily. I mean, my party opposed the bill, and interestingly enough, my party has the responsibility for the Justice Department, who was against the bill at the very start. I mean, there was elements of anti-human trafficking legislation in the bill, which was very, very welcomed. We became one of the first parts of the UK to do that. However, the DUP also slipped in the criminalisation of buying and paying for sex, which, as Lily says, it's very hard to enforce, and it also criminalises women who are doing a profession that they've chosen to do. I have absolutely no problem with people paying for sex or selling sex if they're sex workers, they should be entitled to the same rights, responsibilities, and legislative protections as anybody else working in any industry. And sex work is just another facet of people doing what they want to do to make money safely and legally. And this bill, I think, runs counter to that.
Thank you very much, Martin.
Okay, so we all seem to be agreeing a lot. I would say, I don't think that we should use the criminal law in the context of people paying for sex. We currently ban soliciting as a common prostitute, where the word "common" means someone who's been doing it a few times rather than some socioeconomic thing, which led to a lot of wasted parliamentary time a couple of years ago. I don't think we should be criminalising people for paying for sex or indeed for selling it. And so I don't really have much of a point of disagreement on that, other than to be very suspicious of the arguments about human trafficking. People have done investigations of the extent to which that occurs. There's always a recurring media article about people being trafficked in for a new sports event, and it appears as though it's just the same story being made up a lot of times. But as to the basic issue, no, I don't think that the government should be banning people from buying or selling sex, or indeed deciding that they should be doing so inside a building such as a brothel rather than on the street. And in particular, from the perspective of the sex workers, I think it is very, very dangerous to say that someone who's down on their luck and is just doing this once or twice should get mixed up with policemen for doing so. On the question of pornography, violent pornography, extreme pornography, I have to disagree with Roger Patterson. I don't think that it's appropriate for the government to be saying that it should be criminal to promote rape, whatever that means. A lot of people have, a lot of women have fantasies about that. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should be allowed to produce a video of it. But we're talking about simulated fantasies in all these sort of pornographic contexts, and I don't think that that there should be someone trying to choose what is and is not a bit naughty and we shouldn't be allowed to see. And I
on
prefer
that particular point, Martin, on that particular point, if I may, I think, and Roger, I'm sure will correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the point that point was making with specific examples is perhaps the limit should be when an act itself is illegal, such as bestiality and rape, things that we would not be promoting, that they shouldn't be depicted in things that are legally available to view as entertainment. What's wrong with that?
I think that, if we're going simply by involving entertainment, and I'm not sure that pornography is exclusively sort of entertainment, but I don't instinctively see what difference it makes. We're talking about people simulating a fantasy. We have all sorts of violent films where you're allowed to see people punch each other, committing assault and arson and the rest of it. I don't see the deduction there from saying if it's to do with sex and stuff which is illegal, that we shouldn't be allowed to depict it for entertainment. I think there is something special about sex. We object to it being commercialized, but I don't think that there's any particular exception that should be made for so-called extreme pornography. I mean, these are things that people go on people's heads. You don't know, in utilitarian terms, whether these sort of videos make people less likely to commit offences or commit offences unless you do studies. And I've never seen rigorous studies on that, and I'm not sure that even if it did create some net increase in criminal activity, that the government should be going in and doing that, because it establishes the means of censorship of other things, and that is the problem.
Thank you very much. A few more comments, and then I'll ask our guests if they have anything else to add, perhaps in response. Jim K, at _Jim K_. My views on the sex industry and drugs are very similar. Legalise it, regulate it, and make it safer. John Mousley, at Les Fox, one of our former regular guests from UKIP. Human trafficking needs to be combated, but banning people from performing a job won't help. He also makes the point that he's not sure what some of the terms that have been used tonight in terms of banning pornography means, but he doesn't think Cromwell is still in charge of our lives. #Puritan. At Weird Times is telling us that they should go legal and pay taxes, like everyone else does. Where are we? Anyone got anything else they want to add on this topic?
Well, yeah, so I just want to come back to the point that Martin made regarding human trafficking. I don't think I was clear enough on what I said in the first instance.
Yeah, sorry.
Basically, the bill itself was aimed at tackling human trafficking, but it was altered in a way that they tried to make it look as if they were protecting women by putting this in the bill. However, the EU trafficking directive has specific checks that it needs governments to put into place to meet its EU requirements for trafficking, and not one of them suggested criminalising paying for sex. That's what I was trying to pick up on, but I wasn't very clear on that.
Okay, fine. Well, I mean, EU directives are always attracting gold plating, and it makes it very, very hard to oppose something when it's an EU directive and it's got a gold plate thing added to it. Just in the Irish context, we see in the Parliament in Westminster, people have conscience votes. Abortion was legalised in Britain on a conscience vote, not decided by the Supreme Court in the United States, not decided by the European Court of Justice on trades grounds, as abortion was in the Republic of Ireland. And to see Dáil Éireann use a 3-line whip to force that kind of religiously sensitive legislation through is terrifying.
Lovely, thank you. Lily, I'm going to come to you in a moment, Lily, to close this debate. Roger, I don't know if there's anything you want to add on this one before we close this debate.
No, I've no problem with people having fantasies. It's the actual act of rape. If it's a video and it's depicting rape, then that should be that's got to be a no. The actual fantasy bit, I have no problem with at all. It's just the actual act of rape. It's got to be, shouldn't be allowed.
I'm talking about simulated rape, where there are actors pretending to be involved in that kind of thing, not evidence of a crime. I'm talking about.
No, I just think maybe if it looks like rape, maybe people might consume it as rape, and maybe there should be something there.
Thank you. A few more comments that people have made here. We've had Chris G at Chris G _0. Parties rushing to appeal to traditional voters. That's what this is. He said, sad, but the trend for freedom has only gone one way in recent years. Jim K at _Jim K_. As for the pornography rules, there's not much to say other than they're a complete farce. And we've also got some comments here. Chris Latimer at Just Being an Icon. Yes, it is. They shouldn't be criminalised. Give them a safe zone and legalise it. Points made by several of you here. And the Gunslinger is making a more general point about the role of the DUP and the role they may have after the general election in May in another hung parliament. So we will perhaps come on to that shortly. And I'll just close with the last tweet here before I go to Lily to finish the topic. Guns, hookers and drugs, says John Mousley. It must be fun being a libertarian. Lily, to close this topic.
Well, I'm really happy that everyone seems to agree with me that these two proposals are a complete farce. It's deeply worrying in terms of Northern Ireland to be criminalising such acts on religious beliefs, in my opinion. On trafficking, I should have mentioned trafficking, but yes, we do need to tackle trafficking, but we need to remember that trafficking includes people who do not consent to being in the sex work industry. So yes, we do need to tackle trafficking. We do need to tackle areas where people don't consent to sexual acts who are sex workers. And I would come back to the point of decriminalising it, that the best way to tackle rape and sexual violence and abuse against sex workers is just to make it legalised, because they have more confidence to talk to the police. And what happens in the Nordic model is because the government has criminalised the buying of sex for sex workers, they don't go to the police as much. And yeah, it's a complete farce. It should be repealed. There wasn't enough debate in the House of Commons in terms of porn laws, and it's deeply troubling for Northern Ireland to criminalise something based on religious values, in my opinion.
Thank you very much indeed. We're now going to just the final comments people have tweeted before we move on to our next topic.
Yeah.
Bradley Booth, who was with us last week, I think, at Bradley B95. I'm surprised the government haven't played the "Think of the Children" card. And John Mousley again. You thought this coalition was bad. Cackles. #UKIP. Yeah. Okay. We can have that debate sometime, John. Let's go then and see who our next topic will be using the laser selection method. And the winner is Steve. It's yours.
Hello. Okay, so it kind of follows on from what we were talking about a minute ago in terms of legislating on religious grounds. Now, currently there is a bill going through the Northern Ireland Assembly. There's a consultation that's been launched by the DUP to see if they could legalise opt-outs or exemptions from equality laws for people who are religious who did not want to serve people who were LGBT in case they don't want to promote a same-sex relationship. And I think it's quite a worrying and concerning piece of legislation if passed, especially people like myself. And I just want to know what the other guys think about this.
Now I'm going to tweet in a few moments a link to the BBC story about this for those who might not have seen it. But obviously, Steve, can you just clarify for us, the reason this is being put in is to try and gain not quite a full opt-out, but a derogation, as it were, from the European Convention and from the Equalities Act to state that your religious view actually can be more important than other inherent differences between people. That's right, isn't it?
That's correct, yes. There's been a lot of talk about competing rights and clashing rights when in fact the rights of religious people aren't being impinged upon at all by the current legislation. It boils down to the fact that some people don't like gay sex and are uncomfortable with the thought of gay sex, and they don't want to bring that into their business, and they view gay people as separate from society and not part of it, and this would allow them to opt out of, for instance, the gay couple were to go into a restaurant, the restaurant owner could refuse them a table because it promotes a same-sex relationship. Same with hotel rooms, B&Bs, those kind of things. So it's not an opt-out that people couldn't refuse to serve me in a shop because I'm gay, but if they thought that it endorsed a same-sex relationship, they could refuse that. It's too vague, way too vague to be. It makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, even with my limited legal training, I can see that being something that courts have some real difficulty over. Right, who'd like to join in on this one first?
Do you want me to? Do you want me to then?
Yes, go on, Lily.
I mean, it's another instance where in Northern Ireland they use the notion of religion to introduce discrimination or to introduce their view of morality on other people. I mean, it's completely absurd. I mean, I'm LGBT myself, so it would affect me. It's just, I don't think that any business should discriminate on any basis, regardless of sexuality, gender identity, age, sex. In my opinion, I just find it incredible that Northern Ireland, you know, the Assembly can do such a thing. They seem to be going backwards, not forwards, in terms of liberalism and freedom. And it's more incredible that it's part of our country. You know, it's not in the US, it's not in the mid, and they're trying to introduce such discrimination. You know, it's completely absurd. But it's just another instance where the notion of religion is able to discriminate or introduce their morality upon other people.
Martin, what's your view on this one? I mean, should people's religious views, which are of course protected under the ECHR, should people's religious views be allowed to override the inherent differences in other people, whether based on their sexuality or gender or race?
Okay, well, I've spent a lot of this year living in a country where Jews can't stand for the presidency, so I have some idea of what religious discrimination looks like. But on this, and I'm not a believer in ECHR. I prefer a different way of protecting human rights. But what ECHR does say is that rights, it doesn't say which rights, have to be balanced against other rights. You have your freedom of speech insofar as it doesn't conflict with what's necessary in a democratic society for the protection of the rights of others without saying what those other rights are. And it allows the courts to go and make their own decisions about how to balance the different equalities that we have. And we'll always find that some equalities are more equal than others, to paraphrase George Orwell. So what we have here is just a conflict of rights, and it's obviously possible that you can define a bunch of rights of conflict. You know, your privacy versus my freedom of speech to report on what you've been doing, or whatever. I don't think that equality is the be-all and end-all of what we should be aiming for in our society, in our legal system, in our values. I think there are other important things like social justice, liberty, human dignity, particularly in the sort of Christian democratic tradition on the European mainland. And I have a lot of trouble outside the context of the government, the public sector, and private sector monopolies in telling people how to run their businesses. And I think that people's claim to equality, comes up to the freedom of conscience that people should have to make whatever decisions they want, and that we will infantilize people morally if we try to get society to take decisions on their behalf in an increasing number of spheres of life. So if it were the case that there were monopolies discriminating in the private sector, then yes, I'd support regulation like this. But no one seems to be saying that every single cake shop in Northern Ireland is refusing to sell cakes to gay people or whatever it happens to be. We do know that Catholic hospitals in the Republic are being required to have abortions now. So I don't think that kind of conscription of the private sector is the best way of dealing with the different values that we have in our society.
Thank you very much. I'm going to read a few of the comments that you've all sent in, and then I'm going to come to you, Roger, on this topic. The Gunslinger is telling us everyone in Northern Ireland deserves much better from the Assembly. They make Westminster look mature. Happy Saturnalia at Blue Liberal 1, always giving a nice curveball to us, but just no sex, please. We're British. John Mousley, I think, would agree with, is sort of converging with the points that have just been made by Martin. If I were a restaurant owner, I'd expect the right not to be forced to serve non-vegetarians. I might have to draw a diagram for that, although I'm pretty sure that vegetarianism isn't a right protected under anything. I see the point, but Weird Times is making the point that as it's a devolved matter, it's entirely the responsibility of the Northern Irish Assembly, which of course is true. And Stuart Crow, at Stu Crow, bodies which discriminate in a right-on way, like Proud Camden, seem to get away with it quite successfully. Roger?
Yeah, I think if you set a business up, you should be serving everybody. You shouldn't be able to choose who you want to serve. And the fact is that people can't help what sexuality they are, what gender they are, what race they are. And I just think no assembly, nobody should be able to discriminate against anybody. In this day and age, we're all equal. We should all be the same. And I just think if you start choosing that you can't serve, you don't have to serve people because they're gay or lesbian, where does it stop? You could be choosing you don't like somebody's colour, you don't like somebody's coat, somebody's hairstyle. I think at the end of the day, everybody's equal, everybody deserves to be treated equally, and nobody should be legislating for anything other than equality.
Lovely. Well, that's nice.
Why does it need legislation? Why can't the market do it through boycotts? Why can't the market do it through boycotts?
Yes, but the point made, I think, Martin, is it's only how different is this to the signs that you used to get in the UK back in the 50s and 60s in particular, saying things like no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. I mean, we wouldn't consider that to be acceptable, so why would we allow society to do it?
There's a question in the sidebar, but I think that those places would get boycotted out of business, and they would find that there's a very small number of people who want to give them their money.
Okay, Lily, you wanted to say something on this.
Well, in that case, Martin, do you think businesses should be allowed to discriminate in employment? I mean, we have regulations where you can't discriminate in terms of employment. So, do you think we should?
I don't happen to have too much of a problem with the employment regulations. No. But I think that there are categories that you are allowed to discriminate on in employment that ought to be banned further. But for customers, where it's people not selling their labour but buying the products, I think that unless it's been demonstrated that there's a massive market failure and that discriminatory, racist businesses have got a monopoly on the economy or an effective monopoly, people will boycott them. And this is Ireland, right? They had the feathered boycotts in the 60s, and they're perfectly capable of organising more boycotts if people start behaving outrageously.
Do you think we should be able to? We're not allowed to discriminate in terms of labour. We can discriminate in terms of demand. It doesn't seem to make much sense, but okay.
I don't demand consistency in other people.
Fair enough. Right, a couple more comments that people have made here, and then I'll see if anyone's got anything briefly to say before I ask Stephen to close this part of our debate. We've had Chris G is saying, should the Women's Institute be banned? Well, of course, some organisations should be allowed to explicitly discriminate. Most businesses would find discriminating to be self-defeating. John Mousley is agreeing with that and with what Martin said. Sound, Martin. W.O. Brown at W_O_Brown. Exemptions are dangerous. However, if given the refuser must provide an alternative, but that could be done nicely without the use of the ECHR. Alessia agrees with the points made by John and by Martin. Happy Saturnalia at Blue Liberal. Would Jesus have served gays if he was a businessman? Probably. So. Would Jesus have voted DUP? Hell no.
Oh my God. What would Jesus do?
He says that. Yes, what would baby Jesus do? John Mousley putting out, we can allow people to do things we disagree with. A very surprising concept for liberal types. And Bradley Booth, that allowing businesses to discriminate against customers promotes the view that there's a problem with, in this case, LGBT people. It seems to me that what you're conflicting here is a private right. There's no reason why anyone has to like a sexuality or a nationality or a religion. But if someone is opening themselves up to provide a service or a business, it's no longer a private matter. It is a private matter in the public domain. And surely at that point, the public domain has the right to say, we expect you to meet these health and safety standards so you don't kill your customers with botulinum. We expect you to not open 24 hours a day if you're a nightclub in a residential area. We expect you not to refuse service to people simply on the basis of their race or their sexuality or even their religion.
The difference with the latter one is that the market will correct that in our society, whereas it won't correct some of these abuses that commercial firms make of blaring out music at absurd times of the morning.
Well, they do, because they're ruled by licensing. They're ruled by licensing laws governed by local councils. So they are limited on that score.
I'm saying if there weren't licensing laws, I'm saying if there weren't licensing laws, they would have those outrageous noises, and the market wouldn't stop them. You wouldn't have people not going to nightclubs just because they're too noisy.
Yes, but you could
boycotting cake shops.
Yeah, but you could have some people boycotting cake shops, but you'd still have lots of people going to them, wouldn't you? A boycott over if a substantial number of people stop going to it, and in societies, particularly if I may say, like Northern Ireland, where there is still a very strong presence of particularly strident religious views, it will be hard to get a boycott that would close down shops, and it's ludicrous. What you're getting to the situation is where a shop owner has to look at a customer and decide, is this the kind of person that I like? Which box can I put them in? And then, do I have the right to refuse them service because of something I dislike? And personally, I find that quite a ridiculous situation to be in. But I thought I'd throw my penneth in there before returning to Stephen to close this one.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to pick up on a few points that were made. I mean, this isn't something that I've chosen to be. I'm gay, and I didn't choose to be gay. Whenever you start exempting people from equality legislation, you don't have rights anymore. What you have is people with privilege and those without privilege. As a straight man, I could walk into a restaurant with my wife, if I was straight, and get a table, no problem. If this bill goes through, I will have to think twice before I go into certain places of business as to whether they want my money because of something I didn't choose to be. The market won't correct it, I'm afraid, Martin. Northern
Have you
Ireland isn't
proven
like.
that? I just.
Well, hang on. Let me finish my point. Let me finish my point.
Sorry.
This is the end of this one. Go on, Steve.
The market won't correct it in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is not the same as Scotland, England, Wales, or even the Republic of Ireland. Northern Ireland has a deeply, deeply conservative religious community living here. I can't get married. I can't give blood. I can't adopt. I still can't openly hold someone's hand walking down the street if they're a same-sex partner. It is concerning for me that if this legislation goes through, certain sections of our community will be ostracized because this legislation is too vague and it allows for opt-outs and equality laws, and you don't have equality then. I know you said that businesses should be able to refuse service based on something if it's their own business. Well, I'm afraid not. They open the business to the public, and I am a member of the public. I pay taxes, I obey the law, I work, I spend my money. If businesses want to choose to refuse service to people who are gay, disabled, black, whatever, then they need to put labels on the front of their windows to tell me where I can spend my money elsewhere, because I won't be shopping there. But it concerns me. This is the start of a slippery slope. They said that gay marriage was a slippery slope. This is the real slippery slope here.
Thank you. A few comments which are coming in from both sides of the debate before we move on to our next topic. Chris G is saying, not forcing a religious person to make a cake for a gay marriage is a world away from banning black people from eating. John Mousley, we can allow people to do things we disagree with. It's a very surprising concept for a liberal type. Did I already read that?
Yeah.
Deja vu. But you got 2 bites there, John. Tim Kay, there's far too much protection under the umbrella of religion, and he then says he couldn't agree with me more. Comrade, I like this. More of that, please. And Cameron, oh God, that was a question time moment. I feared for people's lives. Yes, you're quite right there. And there was another point there that I wanted to read out, but I can't find it. It was from Ian. Yes, a confused ninja. Forced diversity encourages integration. Integration encourages empathy, familiarity, and empathy eventually kills phobia. And finally, John Mousley there to give it balance to the other side. I don't care about what sexuality people are. I do care how much we respect people's private property rights. Okay, thank you all very much indeed for your comments on that one. Thank you, panel, for your discussion on that one. Because of the way this one is working tonight, our next topic is going to be introduced by Roger.
Thank you, Gareth. At West Lindsey District Council, I'm now the champion for democracy, and with the fact that after the next election, it's almost certain that under the 16s will be able to vote, it's up to us as councillors to reach out to them and hear their views. And the only way we can hear their views and get them interested in politics is if politics was an open field for everybody, where everybody's got an equal chance. Well, at the moment, and most of the parties do this, you've got no chance of going anywhere. I got selected to go to London for parliamentary candidates selection thing, and the Conservative Party, and they wanted £400. I couldn't afford £400, and the fact is, if I'd been selected, I would have almost certainly been selected for a seat maybe somewhere in Newcastle or Glasgow, somewhere where the Conservatives got no chance of ever winning. So to me, that's a wasted money. What I want to see is local people, local candidates from all the parties, somebody who's got a connection with the area they stand in. It happens in council seats up and down the country by all parties, and they should adopt it nationally with all the political parties. All MPs should be local to the area that they serve.
Thank you very much indeed. Who'd like to start us off on this one then?
I'll have a go.
Fire away, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Roger completely. There should be. I mean, coming from where I come from, Northern Ireland is a very small place in a lot of ways, and a lot of candidates have connections with their own area. I was selected to stand as an alliance candidate for council in May in the area that I grew up in, and I think it's the same with a lot of candidates here. Most of the MPs, MLAs, councillors usually come from the areas that they are elected to, and I think there is an awful habit, especially in the mainland, candidates not coming from the area that they're from, or the area they're representing, sorry, and it turns people off. It really does turn people off. They want to see strong leadership from their own communities. They want to see a local voice representing them. That doesn't always mean the only voice who puts their name forward. There has to be a diverse range of candidates to choose from, but I think they should all be from that area or have invested time and effort in that area over a period of time to make it better, or that they have a plan or a vision to make it better. So yes, I agree completely with Roger.
Just a quick point I'd like to make, and I'll see if Martin and Lily want to comment on this one, doesn't that approach, if we say in order to stand for Parliament you have to stand in the rough area where you live, doesn't that mean that Conservatives in Liverpool, Labour activists in Kent and Devon, Liberal Democrats almost anywhere will never get elected because they don't happen to have been born or happen to live at a particular time in their life in a place where their party is popular? Don't we say perhaps to a whole swathe of people who might make excellent legislators, tough luck, you were born or you live in the wrong place? Lily, Martin?
Well, in response to that, Gareth, I think the question to deal with that is to just reform the electoral system. And you're suggesting, yeah, that would be the case. You know, Tories in Liverpool or Manchester would never be elected. But that's under first past the post. So I don't think it should be made mandatory. I mean, it's up to parties whether they do that. I don't think it should be made mandatory, but I do agree completely that if MPs or local councillors want to represent a constituency, they should at least have lived there for a significant amount of time. I mean, I've lived in Stoke-on-Trent for 11 years, and the MP for Stoke-on-Trent Central is Christian Hunt. He wasn't born here. He's never been a part of Stoke-on-Trent. So I mean, I can completely agree with you. I completely agree with you, Roger. We need to have people who stand in their local constituency where they know the area, they know the people there, they know the concerns. Like for instance, in Stoke-on-Trent, with the pottery industry. I mean, different areas have different concerns and different interests. Ours would be the economy and creating well-paid jobs. So yeah, I agree with you completely, Roger.
Martin.
Yeah, okay, you're not often going to get me to endorse a position of the government telling political parties how to run their what I would call pre-selections. What do you call it over here? Selection. I happen to believe in having primary elections even in a non-fixed-term parliamentary system, and I think that would go some way to helping. Helping constrain it so that people with more of a local link to the constituency got there, and you don't want the sort of silly situations where someone who gets redistricted out of the constituency that she serves is no longer eligible to stand in the more favourable of the two seats into which it's been divided. But as to some residency requirements, I wouldn't mind too much if it were that you had to have lived there for 5 years, or at least in the broad area. But how you would define that in any sensible way for a Westminster election, I don't know. If I were to change the electoral system, it would be have primary elections for pre-selections, but that's mainly because I want to break the power of the whips. But I think that would certainly help. If you're a voter who's not connected with a political party, as I am, then you can easily see that there are carpetbaggers coming from somewhere else, and a bunch of people who've been local councillors forever, and you don't get much of a say on which of those two sorts of people, the political class hacks or the ones who work their way up locally, get to represent the party you intend to vote for. So yeah, I would prefer a residency or some sort of liberal residency requirement, but also pre-selections by everyone in the constituency rather than just the party hacks.
Okay, a few of the comments people have been making so far. We've got John Mousley, who is trying to poach Roger. Don't you dare. Saying, for you, Kip. Roger's far too sensible for that. You can have a go at me over that sometime, John.
I have my own hashtag.
Well, we'll come to that in a second. I know Leicester is having several candidates parachuted in. Primaries or open primaries would help solve this. I don't know if anyone would like to remind me which is the only party that actually has held open caucuses or postal primaries.
I think it's the Conservatives, but it was effectively banned in the Hague reforms in 1999, but keep going.
Except they've all happened since then. We had none before then, and they've all happened since then, and a lot of our MPs in safe seats have been selected by open caucuses, and they don't always select local people. So we didn't have any before the Hague reforms at all. Some of the other comments here, Chris G, some of my favourite MPs hardly ever visited their constituencies. I think the UK gained by having Oldham select Winston Churchill. There's a good one for you. However, Ian, a confused ninja, politics still gives off the impression of it's not what you know, but who you know. Weird Times is saying we should vote for individuals rather than parties. Pyro loves Skeletor. I'm sure you're doing this.
That's the new username of the week.
Yeah. Pyroanus. Is it any wonder people are turned off by politics when in some cases non-local candidates are parachuted into seats?
Get him on, Gareth. Get him on next week.
The invite has been sent, and there are several people who have tweeted that perhaps a change to the electoral system might be the way to do it, whether it's AMS according to Bradley Booth or STV according to Blue Liberal 1. Cami Singh, this is a difficult issue. How exactly do you define local? There are many variable factors. Cumbria, for example, being local to a seat in Cumbria might mean that you have to live in a very wide district. How do you do check? If you live in Cumbria, you might only get to stand for 6 parliamentary seats in your life. If you live in London, there might be 70 open to you. This is a problem.
Yeah.
Comments?
In Bosnia, there is a notion of designating whether you're Republika Srpska or Federacija, and the Emir Silic stood for New Party. Was criticised for changing, I think, his designation from one to the other. But if there's no clear territorial link to some identity, as there is in the federal system, then I think it's really, really hard to get this in any way that doesn't have more perversities than the benefits it generates. So in Australia, in America, it's really clear what your locality is. It's the state level, and you fight over which district. I can't stand for federal parliament in Australia. I can stand for my local, for the state parliament. But it's really hard to see what counts as East Anglia or whatever for me in the UK.
I mean, it would have problems for people like Gisela Stewart, for example, who, of course, is originally from Germany, but has proven to be a very popular Labour MP for Birmingham Edgbaston. Holding on to that seat when others around her fell. Stephen, yours is the one part of the UK where politicians in the Northern Ireland Assembly do have to register as belonging to a particular community, don't they?
That's correct. It happens on the Assembly level. They have to register whether they're nationalist, unionist, or other. Alliance registers as other because we're neither. For instance, on a council level, I have to register from an address within the ward that I stand in and have lived there for at least a year, or prove that I've lived there for at least a year before I can stand for election. I don't know if that's the case in England and Wales.
No, in England and Wales, and Roger, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but certainly for council elections, we have to be resident within the previous 12 months, either have to be resident in the council area, own land in the council area, or primarily employed in the council area, not the ward, but the council
area. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what it is in England and Wales.
Yeah, I think in terms of local, defining someone as local is difficult, because I would imagine that UKIP's definition of someone local would differ from the Green Party's definition of someone local.
Or Lib Dems.
Or Lib Dems, exactly. I think it's difficult to quantify and difficult to enforce, but I wouldn't like to see it legislated for. I'd like to see it encouraged, but that's up to individual parties. I can't enforce that. Nobody can.
Okay, quick question for people here. If we have, as a situation that we do now, obviously we've got our local councils whose focus should be on our local areas, improving our local areas, serving local people. I'm trying not to sound too League of Gentlemen here. When we're electing MPs, I'm glad someone else got that reference. I'm suddenly feeling completely out of it.
It's in Twitter.
Yeah, well, good. When we're electing MPs, of course, we're electing people to write the laws of the United Kingdom or of constituent nations of it, depending on what the thing is. Is it really that important that someone we are electing to hold the government to account and to write our laws happens to come from or have lived in a particular area for a particular length of time, or does their ability to do that job actually outweigh it?
Well, they've still got to represent that constituency, though, Karen. And I get your point that they're dealing with the whole United Kingdom, but they are the MP for so-and-so constituency. Therefore, they have to represent that particular area. For example, Stoke-on-Trent Central with Christian Hunt. He's never lived in Stoke-on-Trent Central before he was appointed, essentially. So
Oh,
they do also represent that constituency, Gareth.
does someone's ability to represent a constituency depend on whether they're from the constituency? Is a question I'd like to ask as well. For instance, if someone was to stand in Rochester and Strood, there's a famous name, for instance, and we're from somewhere else, not that constituency, and we're able to get elected, it's not impossible to say they could do a better job than the current incumbent MP, just because they're not from that area. But again, it's difficult to enforce, and I wouldn't like to see it enforced.
Yeah.
You'd run up against the Equalities Act with some of the proposals for restricting who's allowed to stand in which area.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting full circle here if we go back to that one, aren't we? Let me give you a few more comments people have said, and then I'll come back to you, Roger, to close this debate, if that's okay.
Yep.
And there've been quite a few. Cami Singh here is telling us, regards to national politics, it's not candidates' location that's relevant, it's their knowledge and opinions. Cameron S, should we say those born in Scotland should hold Scottish seats only, etc. Where are we? Stephen Donnelly. At Stephen Donnelly 95. If you're in politics just because you hope to get a job in a safe seat, you're in politics for the wrong reason. And a confused ninja, are we being too reactive again? Should we educate and engage the youth, local debates, growing grassroots support, and so on? And there does seem to be quite a theme here that people like the idea of primaries as a way round this.
Well,
of course, primaries do sometimes choose people who aren't from the local area, but then does that matter if they've been pre-selected? Roger, time for you to close this one, please.
Yeah, I don't think it actually should be living in the constituency. It should be the area, the local area, the county, and a little bit wider, slightly wider. What I don't want to see from any of the parties or anybody really is just celebrities being bussed into constituencies, or somebody who's a lawyer from somewhere that's got no affiliation with the area. How can you connect with young people especially and tell them everything's fair and that they've got an equal chance, when actually at the moment they've got no chance of getting selected anywhere, because the way politics is done excludes them. I think you need people who've got some connection with that county or the area they live in. It doesn't mean to say that if you're from Scotland, if you move to England, you should be allowed to stand in that area. It's where you are at the time. You should be local to the area, the county, or slightly wider still. But it's too much celebrities and rich lawyers and other people being put into safe seats all over the country that have got no connection, and it turns the voters off and has no connection with anybody.
You see it with the vote turnout as well. You see in terms of the vote.
Thank you. That's the end of that topic, though, I'm afraid. If there are two things that people on Twitter certainly seem to agree with, it's that open primaries or caucuses are a good thing in terms of, well, that's the one thing they all seem to agree with, really, is that in terms of getting greater voter involvement. Thank you very much. Our final topic of the night is about party funding and election spending. And I'm raising this one because I was having a bit of a discussion with some people before on this one. You may have seen in the news over the last few days, the Electoral Commission recommended a rise in election expenditure. The government has put through a rise in permitted election expenditure that's even bigger than the one that was recommended. The result of this is there is a trending, well, I don't know if it's trending, but there was a hashtag talking about how this was, and in fact Lucy Powell, who was Ed Miliband's aide MP, saying that this showed that the Tories wanted to steal the election or buy the election. My view on this, and I'm looking for other views on this one, what people think, is that as soon as anyone has to say, well, you're spending more money, therefore you're buying the election, what they're saying is voters are too stupid to make a decision, and the party that can spend more money on posters is the party that's definitely going to win. And it's actually a huge insult to people to say that if they see 3 posters from one party and 4 from another, they're always going to vote for the party that has 4 posters, because obviously that means they're a bit thick. I don't think people are stupid in general. I think people make up their minds based on a whole plethora of things. And the one message that I know, I think most political activists, and I think that includes most of you here, will have come across, is when you go knocking on doors, people's frustration is, we don't hear from you often enough. We want to hear from you more. Why haven't you been round before now? Well, that takes time and it costs money. And every time we design and print a leaflet and go and put it through someone's door, it has to be paid for. and that's more so at election time when there's less time in order to do this. So my view on this would be, yes, obviously, spending on elections needs to be increased. It's harder and harder to reach people at a time when they feel less and less engaged, and when people talk about how spending at elections is buying an election, all you're doing is insulting voters, and it's an argument of the weak and those who expect to lose. Views, please.
I disagree with you completely, Gareth. You don't think money can buy politics? Really? You don't think money buy politics? Have you seen the United States recently, Gareth? Did you see the last election in the United States? Did you see that election, Gareth? Did you see the amount of lies promulgated by big business and corporations?
Yeah, but as you know, Lily, we're not the US. Our parties cannot buy broadcast airtime in the UK, and that's how almost all political campaigning is done in the USA, because you can't do the door knocking and canvassing to the extent that we do here. So that's what most of that expenditure is for. What we spend here is a tiny fraction of what they spend in America per vote. It is per vote. It's a tiny fraction. It's a matter of pence here, and it's pounds and pounds per vote over there. That's because they have to spend it on TV advertising, and we're not allowed to do that. I'm going to reject the comparison, but I'm very happy.
You don't think money can buy politics? That's my question. You don't think it does at all?
Well, can you?
That's what you seem to be doing. You seem to be rejecting any notion that it buys politics. You seem to be saying, "Oh, the voters aren't stupid. The Tories are getting significant money."
It explains some of the variance of
£78 war chest. You know.
Well, only to the extent that, say, the unions have bought the Labour Party in that case. You know.
Well, I prefer to be bought by the working class rather than hedge funds.
But if only that's how unions work. You know, it's being bought by union barons, not by their members.
Yeah. How do they get their money, Gareth?
Most of whom have nothing.
How do they get their money, Gareth? How do the unions get their money?
Do you want me to tell you how the unions get their money? In the public sector, the government allows them to use the state payroll system to chip people's contributions into the union. That's one of the ways they get their money. But I don't like the funding of political parties by unions or big business, and unfortunately in this country, the Tories, Labour and Lib Dems, probably UKIP, which is funded the same way as the Tories, seem to agree, but they refuse to agree on reforming party funding, as any of the reasonable proposals about reforming parties would bankrupt at least one of the three major parties. I think there should be a £1,000 a year cap. Only natural human persons should be allowed to contribute, and they should be on the electoral register. And that would mean that however big an organisation you would not easily be able to take advantage of your size to crowd out upstart parties and all the rest of it. And if that means that political parties have to spend less money, then so be it. We're all in the same boat. Canada has a similar limit. I think it's $1,000 or $2,000 per year, and unions and companies, hedge funds, whoever, unincorporated associations, in the case of the Tories in the West Midlands, don't get to chip in money. It's only individuals. I think there were some individual-based proposals, but they were for that people should be allowed to chip in 20 grand in sterling to a British political party. And I say British, but I mean in Great Britain. It is an absolute scandal that in Northern Ireland parties can be funded by foreigners. And I know that's just to allow Sinn Féin to raise money in America and Colombia and the Republic, but it is still outrageous that foreigners are allowed to fund political parties in Northern Ireland, but not in Great Britain. So get rid of all foreigner funding of political parties and cap individual donations at a grand.
It's different in Northern Ireland, though. It's different in Northern Ireland.
It's always different
in
Northern Ireland.
It is for
you're allowed to be funded by Colombian narco-terrorists. That's what's different about it.
Okay, all right, well, hold on. Just calm down there, Martin. In a lot of ways, it's different here because of the political situation. Parties were afraid to make transparent their donations because they were afraid that their funders would be targeted by paramilitary organisations. That is different to elections in Sussex or Sheffield. That's completely different. That situation doesn't happen here or happen over there, but it happens here. Now, our party has managed to actually secure a legislative motion that is now law that by January of next year, political parties will have to declare donations more than £7,000. It's and the case of Sinn Féin raising money. I don't know how they get their money. They're a well-oiled operation. they're a party that runs both north and south of this island. So of course they have donations that run north and south, and that's to do with the citizenship issue here as well. You can't just say it's to do with narco-terrorists or whatever. Not defending Sinn Féin, but political donations here and political donations in England and Wales are completely different worlds. And believe me, I wish it was more like the UK, but Northern Ireland is about 50 years behind in a lot of ways, and this is another one.
Thank you, Roger. Anything you want to add on this one?
Yeah, I don't care how people fund it. I don't think you can buy an election. I think you can't beat knocking on doors. You can put as many leaflets out as you want, as many posters up as you want. It just turns people off sometimes. I think people want to see you talk to them directly. I mean, in my area, I don't go knocking doors all the time. I haven't got the time. But what I do is knock as I can for the election. When I was elected, I go to as many parish council meetings as I can go to. Put in the parish council, I give them updates of what's going on. And our local, in my ward, we've got a local magazine. I write in the magazine to tell people what's going on. I don't think money can buy elections. It does help a little bit, but I just don't think it doesn't matter to me how much you spend. It's the quality of what you're saying will always get you elected, hopefully.
But money can buy parties, even if it can't buy elections. You can influence the policies of the political parties. And so the fact that, I don't really care what the influence of money is on elections. I'm worried about the influence of money on policy.
Okay, on that point, because this was another issue that was talked about before. People talk about. Someone was saying that obviously, Party X got this money from Group Y because Group Y wanted them to change that policy. There's a reason why oil companies don't give money to the Green Party, and there's a reason why trade unions give money to the Labour Party. It's not because they believe that by giving them money they'll change all of their policies. It's because they either do or don't feel in sympathy with their general philosophy. And so
it's not true in all cases, though. That's not.
I would disagree as well, Gareth.
We're talking the UK here, in particular, mainland UK, because I know less about Northern Ireland than I do about that. And in general, I mean, this is why you don't get, this is why, for example, even in Labour's bad days, you didn't get the trade unions going and funding, to any extent, the SDP or the Liberal Democrats as a non-Tory alternative. Why? Because even though there were many things they did agree with, they realised that giving them money wouldn't change those parties to become what they wanted, which was the Labour Party. And it's the same way with why people do or don't give their own money to parties. They don't give money to parties they disagree with in the hope that they'll change them radically. They give them to them because there's a sympathy there already.
Are you denying that there has ever been, and could ever be in the future, a quid pro quo for a donation?
Oh, of course. There's always going to be something like that. I mean, you can go back to Lloyd George and the purchase of knighthoods and peerages and so on. But in general,
just more recently in the loans to lordship scale.
Yeah. Oh, indeed, yeah. But in general, I would say that it's hard to have a party bought. And there are two main instances where people say, well, because this organisation gave money to this party, that party has done this for this organisation. Well, actually, it's more like, they tend to agree on things, so we'll give them money because we'd rather they did stuff in government than this other group we disagree with.
I find that profoundly unconvincing, but let's see them say it. Go on.
Sorry, Martin. Yeah, I for once I actually agree with you here, Martin. I've been kind of on your case all night. Sorry about that. But I don't have to look very far to see that the money can buy political parties in Northern Ireland. I say it's different in some ways. There is some similarities to what you're saying, Martin, as well. There's allegations regarding the DUP and corporate funding and policies that have changed from what they said a year ago to what they say now, depending on who's funding them. I don't want to make any specific allegations because I don't want to get sued, but the information is out there if you read it. I do believe that political parties
in libel.
Well, this is Northern Ireland, and
I've been living in Bosnia this year. You people are still in the nursery compared with.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
If parties can't be bought, then I believe that politicians can. At the very basic level. Some of them. Yeah, of course, not all of them.
And I think the dispute here between me and Gareth is just how much is that the case. I'm not so worried about elections. and is being bought. I'm worried about politicians and parties. Just would you put a rider on this particular thing going through the House of Lords? These people are caught on camera talking about how they've done it.
Oh yeah, indeed, individuals have been, and our press plays a very, very important role in capturing these people who go out and try and sell their votes or their work as politicians. It's reprehensible when they do that, and they are quite rightly castigated and cast out on their ear, and hopefully increasingly criminalised. My view is, in general, in mainland UK, the established parties, whether it's the Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dems, Green, Plaid Cymru, SNP and so on, they are not buyable. People give them money because they believe in their general principles and what they do. And of course, they want to try and persuade them to do things in a slightly different way. The unions want to persuade the Labour Party to approach employment laws in a particular way that might not be quite what they want the Labour Party would otherwise do. In the same way that business that funds the Conservatives might want them to look at things in a different way to the way they might automatically do it. But they do that because there is already a symbiotic relationship, and not because Party X is a blank sheet that can be filled up by being bought by Group Y.
But how is Canada surviving with its $1,000 donation limit?
I have no idea, and I don't think anyone else here does either.
Right.
No.
I will shut up.
Final comments on general funding, anybody?
Yeah, give me some, please.
Okay, yes. If anyone would like to give Stephen money, £5 a month could help him get new headphones for the next time he appears on Spectrum Debates. No, thank you very much. Okay, I'll just come to each of you. Final comments about anything we've talked about tonight. Just a sort of closing salvo before we finish the show. Lily?
I think we can conclude tonight's debate that Northern Ireland is different from the rest of the United Kingdom. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Martin?
I worry about the resemblance between Northern Ireland and Bosnia, and Stephen did mention, and someone in the Twitter comments mentioned this practice of designating as nationalist or unionist, which I find extremely disturbing and redolent of the sort of crap that goes down in former Yugoslavia, in that particular benighted country. But yeah, obviously I don't agree with most of you on a lot of these things, and I'm glad to have been heard out.
Thank you very much. Roger?
Yeah, first of all, I think everybody should be treated equally, and that's that one. We shouldn't be legislating for porn. Everybody should be the same. In the funding and that, I think Tories should be working with the unions, and it doesn't really matter who funds what. And if anybody's willing to give me food and free drink, I'll go anywhere, but they can't buy my vote.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one, Roger. Stephen?
Yeah, living in Northern Ireland is just the best thing in the world right now. It's just so great. No, I've really enjoyed tonight's debate, and there's a lot to think about there, so thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, all of you, to all of my guests this evening for taking part in such a spirited and interesting set of debates. Little did I know we'd be talking about trade union funding and pornography on the same show. Let's just remind ourselves that they are not the same thing. Can I thank, and I could have chosen something other than the general topic of pornography there, but I didn't. Can I thank all of you at home, or wherever you are, who have been tweeting us and commenting tonight. Thank you for joining in. You are, of course, very welcome to appear down here. I don't know where they are on your screen, so I'm using both hands. Down here in future. Just let us know. I think we've got one more show before the new year, next Sunday. I've got one guest lined up already, so there are at least 3 spaces available, and you could be one of them. So please get in touch and let us know. As well as our regular debates then resuming after New Year, we're going to be having a one-off special on England and what next after the Scottish referendum for England. I've got a few people willing and ready to line up on that one, so whatever your view on that, whether you're opposed to devolution, you want English votes and English laws, regional devolution, or an English parliament, again, get in touch and we'll try and arrange an interesting show on that one. Thank you all very much indeed once again. I hope you have a great Sunday evening, and we'll see you soon. Good night.